we can create this table in other ways, just changing a few things. We can look at them. We can say just drop the table products, and when we do that, then we can also say that create table products. We can say product ID, product ID is an integer, is the primary key. Then we have product name, is a vulture around 20. We are also saying it should not be null. Of course, being a primary key means it is not null, so even if we don't go put null there, then we can say unit underscore price. The data type is a decimal, and we are using default of 10, and then a 2, which is a defined one. We could also say discounted. Price, like the one we had up there, deck. We're also defining 10 on 2. Then we can say that after all this, we can put the checks at the end. Remember, here we were looking at the column and then the check, column and then the check, but now we are creating all columns first and then putting the checks at the end. We can say check, just like we did for primary key or unique. Check unit price to be greater than 0, comma, then we can say that check whether discounted price, underscore price is greater than 0 also, and discounted price is greater than or less than unit price. So we need to close this since we are opening it from here. So with that, we can also create the same table. We can run this and our table is created successfully. We could also give or have given this constraint a name, just like how you would give other constraints names. So we could drop this table once again and rearrange this such that the last one is given a name. Check discount here, can put this, and then we put a comma, we say constraint. So constraint, we can give it a name as valid, can say valid or correct, whatever. Then we say check discount, like that, to be the same. So this table should be able to run, but now with a constraint name instead of creating anything else. So we have that as our constraint name. For any cases, if you tested a wrong value, then you would get that error as a constraint name, maybe by, for example, picking the same item we've been playing around with and creating just one of these values to be 0 is enough to create an error. On 1 is what they are talking about. We could create, let's say, 200 here, and then this would be an error because it would not be a correct value. And now you can see they invoke the constraint valid. So assuming you had created the table already, but you wanted to include in the constraints, for example, let us assume you have this table. You can copy, you can drop it from here, and we call this adding a check constraint after creating a table. So once again, we can say create table, and let's assume that you had stopped at this, saying that that is all you need. We would need another bracket here to make sure everything is okay. So this is also going to be not null. We've looked at already the challenges of leaving it like that. So when we run this, our table is created, yes, but now we can say alter table products, add constraint. You can even give it a name now on this, add constraint. Want to add a constraint on unit price, we can call it unit underscore price. Then you can say check unit underscore price. That should be greater than 0. So that would be the constraint, and the constraint name would be unit price. So when we do this, when we run it here and it goes through like it has down here, we shall have created a constraint on that, and we could test our data here. We can say testing the constraint. We can paste this here, and then we supply a 0 here, which we believe should create an error because we are saying correct and the error name is unit price. But also that constraint you have created is on a full table. You can add a column, for example, together with its constraint. You can copy this, you say alter table products, add the first one is supposed to be a column, which can be, say, discounted, just like the table we are creating up. This shows you that even if you had forgotten, you could do it like this, discounted price, and we said if you're adding a column, it is the column name and the data type is a decimal, and we are saying this is a 10 on 2. We could also give it a name, or we can simply say, for example, you can say constraint. You can try it out, constraint discounted price, price, check if this discounted price is greater than 0, because that is the first one. The discounted price is greater than 0. So you have added a column here of this data type, decimal. This is its name, the name of the constraint, and then this is the constraint. So when we run this query, we have added successfully, so we can pick our information here. Remember, here we could have said not null. You can add that later. Then if we give it a 0, it will create an error here. We give it another 0 here. That will be the first error, and then this will be the second error. So when we run this, the first, you can see we are quickly running into a discounted price. Quite a number of errors, yes. So we can change this to maybe, let's say 50. Now because it already has a value that was correct, so we can redo this, and we shall land on another error called unit, because it is also supposed to be greater than 0. So we could say that to avoid more errors, we could put this at 100, meaning discounted. This is half the price of the product. So when we run this, we expect, since it has no errors, to be able to go ahead and run. We could also add just a constraint to anything. It does not have to necessarily be a name, rather a table or a column. We can just look at our data and we say compare it. If you are going to compare it, then create a constraint. We can say alter table products, add constraint valid, and this valid is going to check whether unit price is greater than discounted price. You must be careful while dealing with these, because they must match the column name. So this is discounted price, this is discounted price, the name is valid. So we are saying that unit price must be greater than discounted price, which is the correct way, or we could have said discounted price is less than unit price. So when we do this and we are successful, then we can pick this data to test it. When we say insert, we can supply wrong values. We can make this 500, for example, and then we know that this is not supposed to work, and you can say the valid constraint is violated. It can only work, we can just say won't work for future reference, because then it won't work, because our constraint now is active and running. Lastly, we could look at how to remove a constraint. We just drop it depending on the name that we gave to that constraint. We could simply say, let us say, removing a constraint. You could simply use alter once again. You say alter table. Table name is products. Drop constraint valid. Okay. So when we drop constraint valid, when we drop it here, and it is deleted, then we can test once again with this value. We can say testing, the removal of the constraint, and paste it here. When we run it, we have this error. Okay, product key, just we can call it 12 or 126. We run it again and it is successful, even when this is apparently wrong, because the discounted price cannot be greater than the unit price. So you can see the reason why we needed that validity check, to know that if, because someone can make an error while typing numbers and it should catch them or stop them from being used. You could also disable. So here it would be good to add this constraint once again, because it is important that we use it if you are dealing with the calculations. Yes, violated because this was the end was inserted. You would need to update the table now and use this primary key to give another value, saying update set and all those, then we can be able to go ahead. So that is what this check constraint, that's how that a check constraint works. You could also choose to disable a constraint. We can let us say select all from products, like that. So we are targeting 126. We can say update products, saying set discounted price equal to, let's say 80, where your product ID equals to 126. So we'll try running this, and we have successfully updated that table. And if that is the case, then we can now add this constraint of validity, and it should be able to work. There it is, successful, and now this can no longer be added in because it will violate the validity constraint. So now, but we can also disable it. We can say disable the constraint. You can say alter table products, alter table products, then you say no check, that it should not check, and then you supply the constraint name, so that it should not check whether, for example, the unit price is greater than, what was the name here? I think it was in capital letters, unit price, unit underscore price. So this would, its purpose would be to make sure that you have, it is to make sure that you have that this is disabled. You could as well drop it, which is a correct way. and then if you want it you can work it out. So that's all about checks. We'll meet in another tutorial about default, and from default we shall look at creating indices, or create an index, and you see what that means. Thank you.